Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Buddy Martin. This is the Buddy Martin Show, about to go live to Dallas, Texas, where they're having day 3 of the SEC Media Days. Our guys were there to watch it and ask a few questions. Rob Browne standing by in the orange and blue room. Later on, Charlie Director will be Ali Peek Wilbur, who's going to join us for her take on what she thinks about how Florida did, how Billy did. I don't know if he can score it, but we'll get your general thoughts too, by the way. If you want to give us a message, we'll read it on the air or post it. And of course, tonight we'll also have David Moulton. Welcome, David, back. He's been out for a couple of weeks. So it's all coming your way tonight, right here on the Buddy Martin program. And live from out in Dallas, Texas, where Rob Browne is standing by. We're going to go ahead and roll the sound, the open, and we'll be joined momentarily by the host of SEC Sidelines, who was pretty active today, by the way. He and Brenden both were getting questions in there. So stand by. It's coming your way right now. The Buddy Martin Show is on the air.
For Buddy Martin, call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind, because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
The program. I'm Buddy Martin. This is the best open in all of sports talk, radio, and podcast, according to what our friends tell us. Hope you'll join us tonight. I want you to weigh in if you're watching this program. Give us your thoughts. Another day before the TV, watching SEC Media Days. I don't know what I was expecting, but I'll give you my thoughts. A lot happened today. Billy Napier had a lot to say, and we'll get your take on that as well. We're standing by. We got Brenden Martin here who asked a question tonight. Rob Browne will give you some comments that were made by coaches. All in all, looks like things are on target out in Big D. Let's go right to the hotline and talk to the man who's there, standing by, and see what Rob Browne has to say about what's happening in Big D. Hello, good evening to you, Rob. How you doing?
Doing great. It's been a great day up here today. I thought Billy Napier, his speech wasn't too long. He seemed relaxed, but he's a planner. But I thought his players, the ones I talked to, Graham Mertz, liked what he had to say. Good sessions. And how much are people really going to say at media days? I think people are looking for those gotcha moments. We hadn't had any so far.
No, but I will say that I will say this about Billy, and we've all kind of been critical of his press conferences where he didn't say anything, didn't answer questions. I'll give him this. Today he was more direct. He seemed to answer the questions more directly. He knew what he wanted to say, had it together. I'm not a psychiatrist, I can't tell you, but it seemed like he was a good frame of mind. And he had answers. And if you look at some of the numbers and things he threw out there to you, talking about his plans, how he's completely redone his team. A lot of new players. And did you get the comment about their new programs? They have lost 500 pounds collectively and gained 500 pounds of muscle. I don't know what that means, but it sounds impressive.
I heard that, and I think back when Scott Cochran left Alabama as their strength coach, they brought in Dr. Ray and Dr. Ballou at Alabama, and they got really, really advanced exercise science and training. Sounds like Billy Napier might be tapping into that a little bit, but very impressed. He's really bragging about the strength gains. Got rid of a lot of fat and brought it back with lean muscle weight. That's good.
Yeah. Rob, can you get Brenden to turn your sound up a little bit? You're kind of low, if possible.
sound
And,
up a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting sounding a little bit.
How's this? Much better?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's get into the question. You asked one earlier today. Talk about the question you asked.
Well, I asked about the culture at Florida and just, I think it was about
Three
what
C's,
he's building
right?
on, and also not getting caught up with logo fever and the schedule. I mean, everybody's talking about the schedule. Billy Napier can't control what these student athletes on the Florida team, what the players are hearing, but they're hearing about those last 5 games. Well, you better do well in the first 7 to have a chance in those last 5 games. But I say it every time I talk about the schedule. You're assuming everything remains static, that all these teams that are picked to be good are going to be every bit as good as predicted, and that Florida, who, by the way, is number 9 on the blue chip index, with 63% of their roster is 4- and 5-star players, it's hard to believe that if they're coached well and put in the right offensive and defensive formations, and the skill position guys step up, and then special teams, you got a really good field goal kicker. You got a punter that averages over 48 yards a punt. If all those guys do their job, okay, all Florida can do is control Florida. They can't control those 12 teams they play. I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think for Florida.
Michael Burgess is proud of CBN today. Rob did a great job with his question, as did Brenden. Thank you very much, Michael. We appreciate that. Our guys are on it. We're going to talk about one of those questions right now. We'll be joined by Ali Peek Wilbur here in a minute. And the question was asked, I've got it right here. You can't hear the whole answer because we couldn't get the whole thing. But here, and we didn't get Rob's question, but he had a good one too. So let's go ahead and play this question. This is, by the way, 2nd and 3rd generation, off the TV, etc. Don't expect world-class quality. Here's Brenden Martin doing this thing.
Hi, Coach. Brenden Martin with SEC Media, Ocala, Florida. Development or picking up DJ Lagway, obviously he is a big deal this year. Could you talk about how he's coming along and what he will mean for the future of your offense?
Yeah, I was talking to, obviously, DJ. We were very fortunate to get in the game early and build a great relationship with him, and he was a great leader in that class. It's an impressive class. DJ comes from a great family. I think if you had a chance to drive up to Willis, Texas and meet his family, to walk the halls in that school, to see how he's been raised, the community that he comes from, he's got a unique character and faith element to him that I respect. And I certainly respect his family. We all know he's talented. I mean, he dominated high school football his senior year. But he showed up ready to work. I can remember having a conversation with him after the spring game. We have our IDP meeting, and we're sitting there in the cafeteria. He's sitting there eating dinner. I sit down and eat with him, and we're talking about Graham coming back and how I told him that was going to be the best thing that ever happened to him. And he said, Coach, I get that now after being through the entire first semester. So it's been an awesome spring with DJ. I think it's unique, right? 43 starts, first offense, you're scripted, and then you've got this guy who's a little bit different type of athlete, no experience, and you're scripting for the second group. And it's been fun. And DJ has made great progress. I mean, if you go back to some of the throwing sessions in January and then you watch the spring game, I mean, he continues to improve.
All right. Thanks very much. That was Billy Napier today, answering Brenden Martin's question. And good job, fellas. All right. So the rest of that, you didn't hear all that. And the rest of it was basically, he said, the part they don't give you everything they say there. I think he said if he had a chance to drive up to Willis, Texas, to meet his family, to walk the halls of that school, to see how he's been raised, the community that he comes from, he's got a unique character and faith element to him that I respect, and I certainly respect his family. We all know he's talented, He dominated high school football his senior year, but he showed up really ready to work. I can remember having a conversation with him. This is what he talked about in the bite about his meeting, having to sit out watching Mertz perform. And the end of that question, when his comments were, he said right here, if you go back to some of the throwing sessions in January and then you watch the spring game, he continues to improve. That's what I appreciate about DJ. He wants to get better. He's a worker, and he's getting a chance to observe, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the country who goes about that the right way in Graham Mertz. A lot of praise today for Graham Mertz and how he's developed. So it was a nice little plug he gave him there, and Brenden asked that question. So of all the things you saw and heard today, Rob, you got a whole day full of stuff. What impressed you the most?
Well, when I asked Graham Mertz in the breakout rooms about where he is today versus where he was a year ago when he first came to Florida, how much has he matured as a player, physically and mentally, and also about the mindset of this Gator team, because there's nothing you can do about the schedule. You've got to control the controllables. And he said that when he first got to Florida, he got a message from DW, and he was kind of like, okay. And someone said, that's Danny Warfel. He's royalty here. Go look at his Heisman statue in front of Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And he's like, oh, wow. So yeah. Billy, he's been really excited about Danny Warfel and the Gator players that have played before really want to help. And here it is. I think this is Graham Mertz's 6th year in college. I believe I heard him say that. And he has experienced a lot. He's very mature. He said when you're the new guy and you're the oldest guy, you spend a little time by yourself. But he likes the mindset of this team. He said they're much more comfortable in what they are doing, who they are. The strength program, it sounds like Florida has made a lot of upgrades with their strength program. But again, you just got to go out and win the first game. That's something Billy Napier talked about at length. He said you can't get caught up in looking from game 1 to game 3 or 5 or 10. You got to do it. And I always agree with this. 1 week at a time, 1 chapter at a time. It's a 12-chapter book. Don't skip chapter 2 to move up to chapter 5. You're going to fail the test. How big a game is Florida? I mean, it's going to get bigger and bigger every day as we get closer to the start of the season. But I just get the impression, Billy Napier, I didn't hear any questions. I was sitting there the whole time about hot seats and all. And I just think everybody in the SEC, that you're on a hot seat. So, look, if you don't win, it takes care of itself. But I just got the impression with Billy Napier that he's very set in his ways, and he's not looking to really get out of his comfort zone. He's going to do it his way because he thinks that'll work. Now, will that be good enough? This schedule will tell. But, they hadn't played a game yet. That first game against Miami, it's big because it's the first game. That's it. That was my takeaway from today.
Okay, good. Let's welcome in Ali. Ali, good to see you again. Say hi to Rob. You know him.
Hello, Ali.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
Good. We're I'm sure having a lot of fun out here in Dallas. Billy Napier, the Gator players that we talked to, I thought they were. I mean, they're sharp guys. They've grown up in the media age. I think his big deal is how do I stop them from listening to Twitter and all the stuff in social media. But I think it'll work out.
Ali, I'm sure you watched some or a part of all of that, and I wanted to add it in there today. And I thought there are a lot of people who seem to be cutting Billy slack. I mean, Greg McElroy came on really strong.
Yeah.
He said, I think there in Florida is the most, how do you say it, criticized or anyway, given the least respected team in the SEC. He said, I think they're a better team than that, et cetera, et cetera. So So I think I don't think we saw any revelations today, but what was your scorecard and what you saw from Billy Napier today?
Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure. So Greg McElwain was at Alabama when my cousin Colin played for Alabama, and pretty sure Napier was on their staff 1 or 2 years when he was there. So I do think maybe there's a little bit of defending my own coach in there with some of those statements. But you know what? I thought he did a good job. I felt like he admitted to some flaws, which is not something we see happen that often. When he made the comments like, are there some games that I wish we'd pulled through in the fourth quarter? Yeah. Or games down the stretch that we could have back? Yes. And I know that those are such minute comments, but they carry weight for me because they're not things we normally hear him say. He normally honestly kind of makes excuses. And I didn't feel like we heard a lot of excuses. And I like that. It's just straightforward. We know we need to win games. And I do agree that I think they have put good systems in place. I am thrilled with the gains in the strength and conditioning room. This has been a concern of mine for more than a year. Last summer at practice, former players had concerns about the team not being in football shape, and we saw that play out in real time during the fall. So the fact that he was able to evaluate that and make the change, I think is huge, right? Like that shows growth, that shows the ability to self-reflect, which I think is something that's very difficult for college football coaches. But at a certain point, you just got to be at the just show me phase. And I don't think he said too much. I think he said just the right things. I think he sounds excited. I think the players are bought in. That is the most important thing. The moment you lose the players, you might as well at that point fire your coach because there's no reeling it back in. But they're 100% bought in.
I think I'm not big on throwing numbers around because, I don't understand all the numbers. But one of the things that impressed me, talking about, I know they did some overhauling when he went through the litany of things they've changed. And he got to the number about how they lost 500 pounds. Isn't that was a quarter of a ton of fat and gained 500 pounds of muscle?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty impressive. It sounds like they're getting lean and mean. Bob
Yeah.
and Ali.
I mean, you can't fix your lines during the season, right? The lines are created between January and July. So that was a huge deficiency for Florida last year. So this is where we're going to see the most growth because this is where they've, made the most gains in the weight room. So I think it's huge and they are excited. He sounds quietly confident. I do feel like he sounds quietly confident.
Same thing, quietly confident. There was an air about him. He didn't have to win media days, don't get me wrong. But he knew what he wanted to say. He said it. It was effective. Yeah. And there's something that Rob's been saying too. All the staff changes and stuff, the new coaches we talked about. And Rob's talked about this a lot on this show about getting Ron Roberts.
I think it's
Auburn. Huge. And Napier said today, we hit the lottery when we got Ron Roberts to come over from Auburn. Rob, you talked about that last night, I think.
Well, his whole deal with Ron Roberts, once he was at Delta State, Southeast Louisiana, Baylor, is the creeper defense. And it's really good at slowing down, really blowing up RPO offenses. And that's what everybody runs. And he did not. We had a couple of NFL defensive linemen on the front, but Auburn's, look, it's the worst 3-year run in 74 years. He took a defense. He kept Auburn in it to the last minute and a half against Georgia, 4th and 31 in the last few seconds against Alabama. He's got better talent, I think, a little bit deeper. I mean, look at the blue chip index. Florida's number 9 in the country. Ron Roberts is a damn good coach. And Billy Napier, this is his 3rd year. And Ali's right, and you're right. You got to show major progress this year. I mean, what are you waiting on? You're going to have a tough schedule every year. You got to throw that one out the window. You got to control everything you can control. And as a head coach, you've also got to be willing to, improvise, adapt, overcome that mantra. He cannot be so hard-headed that he doesn't change because it will cost him his job. Nick Saban owes the next 10 years, starting in 2014 of his career, to Lane Kiffin being that one coach in the staff meetings who would not sit on his hands, who stood up and said, we're a dead man walking if we don't change. Hopefully there's a coach on Billy Napier's staff who's willing to do that.
Ali, what else did you see that surprised you or made you feel good or bad about what you heard today?
So the only thing that I didn't love that I heard, which I maybe catch grief for this because I know this wasn't his intention, but he said something to the effect, we finally have all the players in that we chose. And I understand where he was coming from. He's saying, like, we got our recruits in that fit our system. Everybody's fully bought into what we're doing. We don't have to convince people to be bought in. You want to be here. I get all the, I get the positive of why he's saying it. But it brought me back to when we went through the transition from Zook to Meyer, because it was when Eric was playing. And in Meyer's first meeting with the team, that is when he told them, I know you guys didn't choose me, but I chose you.
Right.
And I do think the second you take a job, you are picking every single person in that room.
Yeah.
They didn't have any control over who was going to be the next coach, but you did. And so I know that's not how he meant it. And I understand what he did mean. But for some of us that have been around for a very long time, that does kind of strike a nerve because you did pick these guys. You picked all of these guys. And there are coaches that come in and win with somebody else's guys. We've had that happen at our own program. But outside of that, I really do think he did a very good job. I think he came across slightly more vulnerable than he had in the past, which I personally enjoyed. Tell me, you know, you didn't do well enough and that you need to get better. I think acknowledgement of the expectations, but not even just acknowledgement, like almost like embracing the expectations was good to see. Like he said, he knew that it was going to be intense and he wanted it to be intense, and good. And now you understand why our fan base is rabid. Perfect. We're on the same page here. And, you know, Rob, you mentioned Ron Roberts and Billy mentioned Ron Roberts. And I think, Buddy, one of the things we've talked a lot about is the fact that Napier is so even keel all the time. And we want to see that passion and that fire. And I do think maybe bringing Ron Roberts in is his way for there to be passion and fire shown. It's just not coming from Billy. If that's not authentically him, now he's got somebody that it is authentically him. And so if those butt chewings are happening and that firing up is happening in the locker room, I don't think it matters that it's not happening from Napier. It just needs to happen in some capacity. And it sounds like Ron Roberts is doing that.
Yeah, he remembers to be inside the building, what's going on, but obviously we don't know everything is happening. I wanted to say maybe he started out the proper way with soft opening, talking about Monty Kiffin. And I like that he did that.
Yeah.
He said, I worked with Lane for 3 years at the University of Alabama. I would tell you Lane coaches because of his dad and what he observed growing up. I certainly chose the profession because of my dad. Lost my dad 7 years ago to ALS. Lane and I have been communicating throughout the week. I texted him earlier this week. I said, I've been through this before, and I told him, coaching is a profession where you have an opportunity to make an impact on people and leave a legacy. And his dad did just that. He made an impact because of how he treated people, the approach that he took to coaching, the way he made people feel. The impact isn't linear in coaching, it's exponential. Most important part here, exponential impact. This is third generation, fourth generation impact that comes with a blessing and the opportunity of being in this profession we call coaching. You don't hear many coaches talk about exponential impact. That's pretty good. He thought it through, obviously. I don't think it was his job to win media days. I think it was his job to kind of assure people that he's doing something about the deficiencies. He addressed that in almost every way, from training, et cetera, And it sounds like his coaching staff, from what we're hearing from people, the coaches, the players, they seem to have gotten it together. And there, one other part I did like too, and Rob, I'm sure you did. He ended his speech by saying, I'll leave you with this. In Hebrews, it says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. And you know that scripture, what it's about, and not seen. I've got all the faith in the world in the people in our building. They're prepared to represent our institution, our fans, our great tradition, our state in a first-class manner. All right. Anything that you think he could have said that he didn't, Rob or Ali, that you would like to see him address?
Go first, Ali.
No, I don't think there's anything else left to be said. I think he did a great job. Billy is incredibly likable. He is the kind of person that you want to coach your son and mold your kid into an adult. Like, I don't think that you could find anybody in college sports that would disagree with that. Unfortunately, that's not enough to keep your job, right? You have to win. But I think that there's been some major changes made. I think that Florida is going to be better than people thought. And I don't know if it's just the summer and we all start getting hopeful or what, but like, I think Florida can win 7 or 8 ball games. And I think that's all he needs to win. Now, would I love to win more? Yes. But I think we're going to head in the right direction this year.
He didn't sound like he was a man on the spot on about to lose his job, Rob. No hot seat I could see there. Did you?
No, and Ali's right. This is the 3rd year, just like Hugh Freeze at Auburn's 2nd year. You got to win some games now. The recruits are going to come. You're always going to have. You don't even have to try at Florida. You're going to be top 12, top 15. You can be top 5 if you win 8 or 9 games, or you show you're making progress. And everybody, that last 5 game stretch that they get to. Again, you're assuming every one of those teams is going to be as good as advertised. We know that doesn't all. It does. It rarely happens. That I do think Ali's right. There's nothing else he needs to say. And I think with a guy like Ron Roberts, I would trust him to run my defense and then try to fix the offense. If I'm Billy Napier, I'm going to make sure I've got people in that room that are truth brokers, that are not afraid to stand up and think differently. You know, you have all these eggheads that are taught to think the same way. You better get some people in there that get out of your comfort, get you out of your comfort zone. That's going to be the big question on offense. That's it.
Matthews has said this a bunch of times, probably 15. He said, I have no problems with the offense. It's the defense. They've just got to fix it. Yeah. And he said, offensively, the only thing I would say I would tweak, throw the ball downfield more. Yeah. You know, which he didn't have a lot of big plays in passing. But, I mean, if you look at the numbers of Mertz, the low number, Ali, of interceptions, his accuracy is good.
Yeah.
He's got some really good receivers. There's several players, the receiving court I haven't seen yet, like Jaquavion Frazier, who's a real tall guy, fast and smart, who we saw one play. He caught Richardson's 2-point pass, beautifully thrown and caught. We haven't seen him since that time. But we know about others, and I think they got plenty of talent on that side. The offensive line, from what I'm hearing, has been fixed.
Yeah.
They think they got that working. They think they can run the ball, obviously. And I heard a comment today that I really liked about the running back situation, and one, if I can find that, I'm going to read here, because I think the running game may have a few little wrinkles that'll surprise you. I don't know if they'll be missing Trevor Etienne that much, but we'll see if the offensive line is fixed. Well, then they're off to Here's a comment from DJ Lagway. Somebody got on. I think it's Kevin Brockaway. I want to give him. He had a big day on Twitter. He said, Shamar James on Florida freshman quarterback DJ Lagway. He has a big arm. He can sling it 60 or 70 yards. And I will say DJ comes in ready to learn. He's always with Graham Mertz in a playbook on the field through progressions and drops. So he's getting some good mentoring, which I think is good there. I can't wait to see him on the field, but I don't want to see him on the field too soon. That means that Mertz is hurt or they're having to play, which I don't think they're going to do. I think their squad is really good. The first 22 on both offense and defense is very good. Do you agree with that, Ali?
Yeah, I saw that quote, and I agree with that about the offense. As long as the offensive line is fixed, I think our skill players are actually incredibly talented. I think our wide receiver room takes a huge step forward this year. They've got Badger, they've got DK. Hopefully we see Mizell. You mentioned Frazier's. Obviously they have Wilson. I think that there could be a lot of great targets. I like that Montrell Johnson is singing Jaden Bow's praises. I think that bodes really, really well. So it is going to come down to whether or not the lines are fixed. And I do know in 2 days last year, they were pretty confident about the offensive line and felt like they had some depth there, and there were some injuries that happened and things just kind of fell apart from there. But as long as the lines are shored up, Florida will put points up. They just need the defense to not put them in bad positions. They need to not make mistakes on special teams, and they will win games.
One thing is very key, and Rob, you kind of touched on this. All fans are myopic. They think it only happens to them.
Sure.
There are 16 teams. Every team has got holes. Every team is going to have problems, and every team is going to hit a rough spot in the schedule. You'd like to think Florida got that out of their system last year. They've been there. They've gone through the tough times. And I think we can't be sure Ole Miss won't fall apart. They're loaded with talent, but it's a long schedule. You get to the end of the season when they play them, there could be different teams out there. So Gator fans, if you're discouraged, keep in mind everybody's out there trying to fix certain parts of your team and get better. How do you do that? I heard someone say yesterday, I forget which coach it was, said if you're trying to fix your team through the portal, I think it was Brian Kelly 2 days ago, you're making a mistake. You waited too late. But there are people using like junior college, trying to go get that quick player that this might be eligible. So I don't know. We're halfway through it. By the way, I think Nick Saban's been terrific. He's really been good. I've enjoyed hearing him and the broadcast. And gosh, I can't believe we got 2 more days of it. So David Moulton's having a problem getting through. So you guys talk among yourselves for a minute. Let me go get David and see what we can figure out here. All right.
Rob, something that I did a video on recently, but I'd love to get your opinion on it, is basically where would you rank Graham Mertz in the SEC quarterbacks that we expect to be starters this season?
Well, I mean, what did he throw for close to 3,000 yards last year and 4 interceptions? I mean, his numbers, he's a 6th-year college football player. Mm-hmm. And when he talked about Danny Warfel, and he said, I heard he's going to be here today. I can't wait to see him. I'm going to give him a big bear hug. As soon as I walked out of the main media room, I walked up, and I'm like, God, there's Danny Warfel right there, standing next to Graham Mertz, and a bunch of people around him. Danny Warfel exudes confidence. Yeah. I mean, even rival schools love the guy. How can you not? I mean, honestly,
well,
I think he loves helping out. Graham Mertz he's a 6th-year senior, man. This is it.
So, which is kind of my point, right? Like, so we would put Georgia, we would put Ole Miss, we would put Texas ahead of Florida. I think you can argue Cook at Missouri, maybe. Yeah. But honestly, you are looking at Mertz being probably going into the season the 4th or 5th quarterback in the SEC. I think Florida is a decently talented team. They are absolutely somewhere between 6th or below in the SEC in terms of being able to hang talent-wise. Yeah. So if we have similar talent to most of the teams we're playing, but a better quarterback, that's got to give Florida a pretty big advantage in most games. And I think that maybe that's something, I don't know, that is being a little bit discounted when we look at this schedule. But so many of these teams are breaking in new quarterbacks or new coaches or both. And there is learning curve that's involved with this. We're going based off of, the hype of a player or the potential of a player, not the actual results of a player. And Graham Mertz is a serviceable, experienced quarterback with a lot of wide receiver weapons around him. And I think that is going to really help in some of the close games that Florida will be in.
Well, didn't Shane Matthews say Graham Mertz is one of the smartest quarterbacks he's seen?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is saying something, right?
It says a lot. Shane played 14 years in the NFL.
Yes.
I mean, I know he don't want to get into coaching. I think I've asked him that, but he knows football. He's forgotten more than most of us know. But what I like about the way you do things, Ali, is you're not afraid to say what you think. You're not worried about hurting people's feelings. Well, here's a case where I'm going to put Graham Mertz as 5th. I think working with Danny Warfel and being mentored by him is going to really pay off. And he's got a running game. Montrell Johnson, and you got some depth in the running back room. That helps a lot. And the defense, I think, will be better. I mean, Austin Armstrong was good. He's 30 years old. Ron Roberts, he is a very innovative coordinator. They'll adjust in real time. But you have to say, I totally agree with your rankings. I was going to pick Graham Mertz as my 5th quarterback. Again, he makes good decisions. He's not going to get you beat. Florida's just got to work on – you can't make a second first impression. I remember the Utah game like you all do, the first game. Count the numbers of guys. All these coaches now fix special teams. That's a third of every game. You do that, that's worth 2 wins. I bet you it'll be 2 wins that you're not counting on or Vegas isn't counting on. That puts you at 8. You win 8. Let's say Florida's 6-2 in the last 4 games of the season on that schedule. At worst, I think they split and go 2-2. It's all about what you do the week before. It sets you up for that next week. You got to hold the locker room together. I like Graham Mertz. That guy, I was really impressed one-on-one with him, watching him how he reacts around other people. You know football, Ali. Your husband played, your brother played, your dad, your grandfather. My wife, what she does, she looks at body language. Graham Mertz exudes confidence. Not saying he's going to win the Heisman, but he's a very confident quarterback.
Well, and confidence is contagious, right? So it is contagious in the locker room. And then that's where stringing those wins together brings you more wins down the road, right? If you start out the gate strong, if Florida starts out and wins their first 5 of 6, or even a 6-6, 4-2, something like that, they will upset some of the teams on the back end of the schedule. Now, if they open up and they lose 4 of the first 6, I think they have a lot harder time believing that they upset, because they're not going to believe in themselves. But Florida's schedule sets up really nicely to surprise some people later on. If you win Miami, and I know Coach Napier said it's important only because it's the first game, but I think there are so many parallels between where Miami is and where Florida is right now. And they compete for so many of the same recruits that it would be a huge statement for Billy Napier to come out and beat Mario Cristobal. I think that it is a huge game, not just because it's the first one on the schedule, but you win that. Let's say you beat Tennessee and you beat UCF. You are building this momentum, and then you can get the Kentucky monkey off your back. I mean, you could surprise some people.
I'll throw this one at you.
Conversation, by the way, David Moulton's having problems with the link. Everybody else got in fine. He's tried 2 or 3 times, and so he's sorry. I said, well, holler at us if you can. I want to get back to one thing, but first let me just say this program is brought to you by our fine sponsors. One of them is Meldon Law. And Meldon Law, of course, they don't back down. They're very loyal supporters of the Florida Gators. They're only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. They do a lot of things promoting the Gators, give away tickets. You want to check them out this fall for a possibility of winning tickets, basketball, what have you. Meldon Law, of course, they also are the law of your business. And if you have a case you'd like reviewed or one you're not happy about, like you get a second opinion in medicine, you get a second opinion from Meldon Law. Call them, Meldon Law. They don't back down. Okay, so let's get back to the Miami thing. There's something in my craw here. Maybe I'm just not seeing it right. I hear everybody talking about Miami, how huge it is. I'm trying to be objective about this. I'm thinking, when did Miami become Alabama? We're not talking about a team that's setting the world on fire. Cristobal's struggling worse than Billy, and everybody's. I guess they're thinking about that they're 2 struggling programs, and that both of them need it badly. And that I don't know why, but everybody seems to act like Miami. I mean, Shane says it's one of the biggest the biggest opening game he can remember. I mean, why? It's Miami. You still got the SEC to play.
Miami wins the off season every year. Just ask them. And so any bravado that they have will be gone by September probably. But it's not that Miami is Alabama. It's not that Miami is the toughest team on our schedule. It's that Miami very much mirrors the position where Florida is. Cristobal is in his third year. This is someone that was brought in because he's considered a amazing recruiter. We fight for the same talent every single year. So it is going to show which program made the better decision the same year, which program is got the better trajectory. And so I think it is incredibly important to win, but it doesn't have to do with the fact that they're the toughest team on our schedule. They're not. That's Georgia. There is probably 4 or 5 teams on our schedule that I would argue maybe is going to be more talented than Miami, but it is the biggest one because if we lose it, I don't love the trajectory of the rest of the season.
Mario Cristobal is a 500 career coach. Miami, this is not the Miami from 83 to 01. It's not even close. Okay. Florida talent wise on the blue chip index, Miami's not even in that index. Florida's number 9 on the blue chip index. I'm with Ali. It's the first game. You lose that game and you lose it badly, you better be hoping that you don't lose that locker room. Because with the portal, it's easy for guys to start planning ahead. But here's something really important. In the past, what made the SEC so special, I had a coach tell us this a couple of weeks ago on our show. It was the 2 and 3 deep depth chart at every position. Now, a lot of those guys that used to be waiting their time, they've checked out in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about 1 through 22. Really, it's 45 to 85. That's where you make or break your team. And I think Florida, talent-wise, again, 63% of the roster is 4 and 5 star players. That somebody's going to step up for Florida that nobody's talking about. Who's it going to be?
Well, I'm looking the records up just to refresh my memory. I believe Miami was were they 7-6 last year?
I believe they were 7 and 6.
And 3 and 5 in their conference. So
and they played an easier conference than Florida. So
yeah.
I don't think they get a pass just because they're in the ACC. They would have had a worse record in the SEC.
They played Rutgers.
They underperformed for what the Miami fan base wanted, and so
they beat. I mean, let's see, they beat BCU. They beat Temple. They lost to Georgia Tech. Lost to North Carolina. They beat Clemson. I didn't know that. They beat. Am I looking at the right year? They beat Virginia. This can't be the right year. This can't be a Pinstripe Bowl. Yeah, I guess it was. They won the Pinstripe Bowl. They lost the Pinstripe Bowl. Okay. They beat Boston College at the end, and they lost to Louisville. All right, so they had a better record. But I don't know. They got a good quarterback out here, Ali. Their new quarterback is pretty impressive, right?
Yes, on paper, right? In theory, but I want to withhold judgment until we see him in the new system because we've got an experienced quarterback in Graham Mertz leading us, and I think that gets the nod at this moment.
I know we've talked about schedules, and that really is what it's about: is roster building, schedules, and of course, coaching and athletes performing. But of all the teams you've heard about that you thought were contenders, which ones do you feel like might be overrated in the SEC? I'll tell you one I think might be, although I don't know, is Missouri. But because of their schedule, it's so easy. A lot of teams have early schedules that are easy.
So we talked about last week, and honestly, I look at Missouri's schedule and I only see 2 games that I think that they lose.
Yeah.
And that doesn't. It's not necessarily about Missouri's talent.
Yeah.
It's about the way the schedule sets up for them.
Right.
And then we find out if they're good or not in the playoffs. Right? 10-2 is going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. So, Saban came out and flatly predicted it was going to be Georgia and Texas. Texas getting a lot of love. Sark, he's got his team. They're playing well. He really likes them. But look, it's a long schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen during the season. Players get hurt or get kicked off the team or make a mistake or you fumble or you make whatever. And so I don't know that I love Texas. Certainly, I think they have an inside edge. Apparently, Oklahoma doesn't have quite the talent that they like to have. I think it's Georgia. I think it's Georgia's to lose. I really do. They don't have any real flaws. They got the best quarterback in the league. As I'm looking at it right now, I don't know what LSU's got. Brian Kelly was hesitant, but he did sound to me like he had some concerns, and he knows he talks about building your team through the portal, which he did last year. He says really can give you a false read because you don't know, even though you got good players, if they meld, if they're all going to play on the same page. So that situation will be interesting. I don't know what to expect. You guys got a couple of dark horses you want to throw in there, or any teams you want to talk about?
Dark horse? I mean, Nico Iamaleava, Tennessee. But
how about the teams, though? Which
teams?
Yeah,
Tennessee. Tennessee would be a dark horse. But like what Ali's saying, Alabama, they have probably, according to Pro Football Focus, the best offensive line in college football.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have Jalen Milroe back. And there's an intense quarterback competition. Ty Simpson, Dylan Lonergan, they're good. They've got running backs. I think where I'm concerned is Alabama's defense. Kane Womack, I don't know if he's going to be a great coordinator. Kalen DeBoer, I think Alabama's going to be really good this year. But Tennessee would be my sleep. But I think Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz talked about the death row defense. But they lost their coordinator to LSU.
Mm-hmm.
And LSU is a sleeper. They've got maybe 5, 6 defensive linemen those coaches probably would trust. Ole Miss, it's got 12 that they feel confident enough could start for them. 12.
Yeah.
That's where Ole Miss could not hold up against Alabama and Georgia last year, was in the line of scrimmage. That game in Athens, they lost 52-17. But it's going to be the teams that avoid injuries and have the most quality depth on the 2 and 3 depth chart on offense and defense. That's what it's going to be. I'm telling you, Luther Burden III, 1,212 yards receiving last year, 9 touchdowns. 700 of his yards came after contact. I mean, he's a running back receiver. They had Cody Schrader last year with 1,627 yards. I'd keep my eyes on Missouri. I think Eli Drinkwitz is building a good program up there. And really, I don't know if I'd feel this way if they had Florida's schedule, but I'm with Ali. 9-3 is their worst case scenario.
So, Rob keeps mentioning the 2 and 3s, and that is honestly where my interest in watching how Texas and Oklahoma fare in the conference. They're both incredibly strong teams, and they've had strong programs, for 100 years. So it's not like these are patsies that are joining the SEC, but we always talk about why the SEC is such a strong conference, and it is because the big time teams in other conferences only have to get up for a game or 2 a year. It keeps their team as a whole healthier. So they don't have to go 2s against 2s, 2s against 3s, in the same way that the SEC does. We beat the pants off of each other every single week. And because of so many injuries, you are seeing 2s and 3s on a regular basis. So SEC teams are built deeper out of necessity. And I get the point that the transfer portal changes that sometimes because instead of waiting, you just leave. But I'm interested to see if Texas and Oklahoma are built that way because they haven't had to be before. That doesn't mean they weren't, but that was not a necessity out of being in the Big 12. And it honestly wasn't even a necessity, to win a national championship game or a playoff game or anything, because that's getting up for 1 or 2 games. Can your team survive a 12-game season?
Ali, what you got to be ready for?
It's an endurance contest. I've said that a bunch of times.
Yeah.
It was before we got to this point, and now with a deeper schedule, tougher schedule, again, I use that term I made up, residual impact. it adds up. It's like a prize fighter when he keeps getting hit. And the team, I mean, that's one thing I like about what Billy did with his team. He got leaner and stronger because they're going to get beat up. By the time you get to November, everybody's going to have players, especially the line of scrimmage. So, that's what other leagues are counting on, that the SEC will beat each other up. And they may very well do that. Let me tell you about our sponsors. We'll come back and get your final thoughts on what we know now that we didn't know earlier, if we learned anything from SEC Media Days, and what do you think that nobody else knows about these Gators? Let me tell you what I know. TitanMRI.com is the place you want to go and check out if you need an MRI. If you're in the North Central Florida area, this is a deal for you because here's a company that wants to make sure you have a good experience while getting an MRI. They make sure that they do their part. You can tailor make your own appointments for hours you can keep, nights, weekends, whatever. You also, if you don't have insurance, they'll take cash or card. They don't hold you up. It's a fair price. And, of course, they want you to have a better experience once you get inside. You hate those MRIs where you get all claustrophobic. They try to have it more comfortable for you so you're not. So if you need one, you need to go call these people, check them out, and now go to the online TitanMRI.com. Find out how you can get involved, have a good experience at TitanMRI.com. All right. What do you think Rob, that nobody else knows about the Florida Gators?
What I do know is, like Ali has been saying, and I'm going to say it, they're playing a Miami team that everybody wants to make out as this juggernaut. Had they been in the SEC last year, they went 3-5 in the ACC. They may have been 1-7. Okay? I'm not trying to discount them, but they're making this game like Miami's just really good. They're not. Florida State went undefeated and didn't get in the playoffs because the ACC was perceived as weak. So I think Allie's right. You want to be good as a runner? Run a lot of hills. You want to be good at anything? Do the things ordinary people don't want to do. It sounds like Billy Napier. If you go back again, when Scott Cochran left Alabama to go to Georgia to be their strength coach, Dr. Ballou and Dr. Ray came down from Indiana. Saban brought them in, and they did the strength program like no one had ever done it before. Billy Napier talks to his mentors, Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But again, you got to be prepared to go 17 games to win it all this year. Florida's not void of talent. They're just void of confidence. Winning one makes it easier to get the second one. And that's all they need to do. Sounds easy, but that's what they got to do.
Ali?
I mean, well, to Rob's point, winning begets winning, right? But I do think Florida is in a better position than people are giving them credit for. And I think that's great. I think it's really good to come in under the radar with low expectations. I think it's a perfect place to be, but I do think Florida matches up well with Miami. You mentioned Miami's quarterback, Cam Ward. He might be fantastic, but he hasn't played a single down for them. So the people that are talking about how Miami's coming in with the better quarterback is very difficult for me to wrap my head around because he hasn't played in this system. He hasn't played for these coaches. I don't know.
I'll take Graham Mertz.
Say that again?
I'll take Graham Mertz over him.
I will keep Graham Mertz. I think about UCF. Florida should have, take care of business against UCF. I love that we play Tennessee early. I think Tennessee has had this interesting pattern the last couple of years where they start off the season and it takes them a while to kind of almost get their sea legs. And then by the end of the season, they're clicking on all cylinders. But then at the beginning of the next season, it's like we're starting over at the bottom again. It's happened several of the last seasons where I've been thankful we played them earlier rather than later. I think that's going to be the case, for us this year too. I think that they can do that. If they can beat Kentucky, they need to get the Kentucky monkey off their back. That honestly may be one of the very most important games for Coach Napier because he has to prove he can win the games that he should. And Kentucky should be a win for Florida every single year. But I do think they're going to surprise some people, and I do think they match up better against this schedule than maybe people are giving them credit for.
I wanted to ask you, looking at Florida's schedule, the upside of that is it's a hard schedule. There's some really good games on the schedule. But you Gator fans have been complaining about that. You got them this year. If you had to cherry pick the one game, aside from Miami, the opener, which looks like an obvious one, the one game that you'd like to go to, I'll tell you who mine is. Florida at Texas, November the 9th. I want to see that game. I want to be there for that game. That's a significant game. I wrote a piece today I'm working on about the marriage of this whole thing. When you look at what Florida's doing, what the league is now. Rob, you're too young to remember this too, but in the post-war era, where Notre Dame and Army dominated for so long, really the SEC wasn't much of a factor. And really when football hit a national stage was the height of TV, when TV was really clicking. And they started with those classic games like Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, of course, and Bud Wilkinson, 47-game win streak. They had a great run at it. The old Southwest Conference with the great players like Doak Walker of SMU, Bobby Lane of Texas, etc. And for a long time, that league was kind of the premier league on TV. They were playing for national championships a lot. This one is you grew up in the 50s, you knew about Texas and Oklahoma and all those teams. Now it's come full circle, and the superior league, the statistics are empirical about this, is obviously the SEC, and the old Southwest Conference has disintegrated. It's almost like the scavenger hunters have come along and plucked the two prize teams, what's left of that old Southwest Conference, and put them right in there with the SEC to have the greatest college football conference of all time. It is epic. And this season is going to be a terrific one with 12 teams in the playoff. I am so looking forward to it. And I got a little beat down like you all did talking about NIL and problems. This is going to be a sensational season. And we're going to see the fruits of it. And we're going to be talking about games every Saturday that matter.
All right. Ali, I'm going to throw this one out at you. You tell me if I'm right. There are two series, one for Florida and one for Auburn, that you just don't lose. Kentucky for Florida, you'd won 31 straight. The fact that you've lost several times recently, look at the state of the program. And for Auburn, South Carolina. They don't play them regularly. They hadn't lost to South Carolina. Auburn hadn't since 1933. They only played like 10 times, but they lost in 2020 in Columbia. They lost in 2021. Auburn's in the midst of the worst 3-year cycle since 1948, 49, and 50. Same thing with Florida. You can't lose those games. Sorry if it hurts people's feelings to say that, but you're Florida. You're a big boy program. Auburn, you're a big boy program. You better raise your damn standards. And there are certain things that are not allowed. And for those two schools, you can't lose to those kind of programs. I know Kentucky's better than they used to be, but you're Florida. You're Auburn. You don't lose those games.
It's not that good.
You can't win the games you're not supposed to until you win the games that you are supposed to.
Yeah.
And Kentucky is one that Florida should always, and that's very similar to Auburn and South Carolina. And that's why I think it is incredibly important. It is incredibly important for Napier to win the winnable games on the schedule this year. If you upset an Ole Miss or you upset a Texas or a Florida State or something like that, great. But you must beat the teams that you are more talented than. Because if you are more talented and you lose, that's on coaching, in my opinion. You got to take care of business there.
Yeah. And Florida State is going to pay a price this year. I don't care. Criticize me all you want. When you had 31 guys quit, and that was disgraceful. I don't care. Sorry you didn't get in the playoffs, man. Grow up. And I love Mike Norvell as a coach. I followed him since his Memphis days. But you got destroyed by Georgia. And I know you had Georgia had guys that opted out, that quit on their team too. Inexcusable. That is a problem. It's unacceptable. Man up, Florida. I mean, all these, man up, grow up.
when you build a team through the transfer portal, that's all you're building is a team as opposed to a program. And I do think that that's part of Florida State's issue and will be an issue going forward. Buddy, to your point about Texas, so I want to go to that game. I am excited. It's their first SEC game. I have been telling people it feels like a novelty, and that's why I want to go. It's not the most important game for me on Florida's schedule. There's actually several that I think are far more important. Billy Napier is not losing his job, whether or not he beats Texas. And I do find great enjoyment in letting Texas fans know that 5 SEC teams have won national titles since the last time they have. Multiple of them.
Boom, there it is.
Georgia, LSU, Florida, and Alabama have all won multiple times since the last time Texas won. So I think they are coming to the greatest conference on earth and making it even greater. But it was already the best conference in college football.
Yeah.
Well said.
3 C's: campus, culture, coaching. Used to be cash, clothes, and cars for recruits. Now it's campus, clothing, culture. I mean, that's where we are. And if you've got a tough roster and a tough locker room, I mean, blue collar Billy, they call him, you're going to have a chance in every game you play. Because if you pound on people and keep pounding on them and pounding on them, by the fourth quarter, they don't want any more of it. And a damn reason you can't be the toughest, hungriest, hardest working, get after their ass team in the country. That's what you've got to do as a coach nowadays. Because everybody's got players. And I like what Ali pointed out, and you did too, buddy. Y'all didn't choose me, but I chose you. You're my players. You got to wrap your arms around them and tell them how much you love them. You got to just love on them every day. The harder you push them, just tell them that's because I love you so much. And you got to get them to believe in one another. The guy to your left, the guy to your right. Know their first name, their middle name, their last name. Know where they're from. Know what makes them tick. You better know that when you go into battle. Every day. It matters.
I think Nick Saban did a great job with that. He's done a great job with that, doing that, and I like his TV work. Back to one final thing to close out. I love it when you get a little squabble going. Boy, I tell you what, Cole Kubalik and Dusty Dvorak were going at it yesterday, and it was really getting kind of testy, and so much so they brought back a minute of it and showed it today, and they had Dvorak back, but Cole wasn't there. But they were laying it down, he was saying, well, it's Texas Red River rivalry. That's it. That's the game. It's basically the biggest rivalry there is. And Cole said, hey, look, I'm sorry, it's the Iron Bowl for me. And that has to be. And they got into it. So now we're beginning to see the cultural differences in this new conference. The infighting now. What's it going to see? Where does the Egg Bowl fit in that, if at all? How about Florida, Georgia? It took Chris Story to bring that up later on.
Yeah.
That's worth a mention, at least. So the people who think, and I've been to all those games. I've been to the Red River rivalry a couple times, and it's a great event. And again, they say, well, it's really neat to get the state fair. Who cares about the state fair? It's a football game, and how it's so great. Well, I'm sorry, it's not been great, and it's one of the top rivalries in the country. Certainly not as good as Michigan, Ohio State, and by a long shot. But in terms of neutral fields, okay, I'll put them up there. Give me Florida, Georgia, and give me the Iron Bowl. In my opinion, of course, I'm an SEC guy. Am I crazy?
No.
I mean, it's a great rivalry. It happens too early in October and generally too early in the day. We are getting it later in the day this year for me to take it very seriously as the very top rivalry. I am really, truly, Florida, Georgia, Halloween weekend or the beginning of November is the earliest any rivalry should ever happen, in my opinion. The later in November, the better. It's a great game. They are not going to understand that we all have 3 or 4 rivals. We get up for every single game. The intensity that we have every day is going to be different than they were used to with the other games that they play.
Yeah, they only had one big one, and Arkansas maybe. But Rob, what do you think? We've got 30 seconds.
Allie's right. It's one thing for them to play in early October at 11 a.m. Central for the Texas State Fair, which lasts for 3 months. in that rivalry game. Now, no, remember this, guys. Oklahoma was in the Big 8, Texas in the Southwest Conference. In the past, I remember this. OU Texas would play in Dallas. The next week, Texas would play Arkansas. That's something people are not talking about. And Arkansas makes Texas. Arkansas will go 1-11, and it's a great year. They hate Texas. It's another level of hatred. And what I'm finding out, I've been to Texas games. I've been to Austin. It is a cool town. There's so many subplots. Who's the country music capital of the world? Nashville or Austin? Who's the real UT? Tennessee or University of Texas? There'd be no Texas without the Tennesseans. So I think there's so many great storylines. The Egg Bowl is the nastiest rivalry in the SEC. Florida, Georgia, I think there's a lot of respect between them. Auburn, Alabama, a lot of respect. I mean, my wife's evolved for life. My oldest daughter's an Alabama grad. Everybody else is Auburn. But my daughter's she's still a good person, even though she went to Alabama. But we get along. But the Texas and OU people have been telling me all week long, all these writers, they go, I cannot see us getting together under the tailgate tent, drinking beer and eating wings and having a good time. We just don't do that. I said, well, we do it in the SEC. Because I've grown up with that Auburn, Florida game. All I can tell you about that game is, God, so many nightmare. That's a great rivalry. And like you say, Allie's right. Everybody down here has got 4 or 5 of them. They've got to now contend with, okay, you got the Red River rivalry. I'll give you that. Thank you, sir. May I have another? College football, and we're just that much closer to the season starting. And so far, SEC Media Days has been gone off without a hitch. There's just so many storylines, and there's so many new rivalries. Man, Texas and Florida, Texas people are already talking about, and neither one of those schools was featured today, but I talked to a lot of my Texas media friends. November 9th, the Gators and Texas, you're talking about the top 2 high school football states in America. I mean, I don't think people fully are appreciating what's going on in the SEC. You think it's been great before. I mean, we're just getting started.
I have to stop you there because you got a dinner date tonight.
No, we're good.
Hi, Coach. Brenden Martin with SEC Media, Ocala, Florida. Development or picking up DJ Lagway, obviously he is a big deal this year. Could you talk about how he's coming along and what he will mean for the future of your offense?
I was talking to, obviously, DJ. We were very fortunate to get in the game early and build a great relationship with him, and he was a great leader in that class. It's an impressive class. DJ comes from a great family. I think if you had a chance to drive up to Willis, Texas and meet his family, to walk the halls of that school, to see how he's been raised, the community that he comes from, he's got a unique character and faith element to him that I respect. And I certainly respect his family. We all know he's talented. I mean, he dominated high school football his senior year. But he showed up ready to work. I can remember having a conversation with him after the spring game. We have our IDP meeting, and we're sitting there in the cafeteria. He's sitting there eating dinner. I sit down and eat with him, and we're talking about Graham coming back and how I told him that was going to be the best thing that ever happened to him. And he said, Coach, I get that now after being through the entire first semester. So,
all right. Rob, I'm sorry we missed you there. Although we had that say goodnight to Ali. Rob, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. We'll just say goodnight to you. Thanks. Good job.
Night, buddy. Night, Ali. Great time.
Good night, Ali. Good job. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, Rob Browne, and we say goodnight to Ali and thank you for her contributions. I want to tell you about our sponsor, who does a terrific job in Ocala, Renstar Medical Research. They take care of the community. They also are a great stakeholder downtown, and they are people who care about you and care very much about the medical status of things. That's why they have all these clinical research trials for you to take part in. They want as much data and data as they get from the area to send it off to these biomedical companies to find out what works for us here in North Central Florida. So if you get the opportunity to join or go by and see the folks at RenStar downtown, or go to renstar.net and find out some of these clinical trials might fit you. Certainly, there's no charge to you or your insurance company. You go in, you see if you qualify, and in most cases, you get paid for time and travel. So they're trying to do better for us, do better for them. So check out RenStar Medical Research. Seeking tomorrow's health questions. Seeking tomorrow's answers to today's health questions. Have a great night, folks. We're back tomorrow night for the final show of the week. And thank you for listening and thank you for watching. And let's hope that we get more good news out of Dallas tomorrow.